9:35 at latest, I guess, right?
Yep. I will call the meeting back to order. It is 9:32 from our brief recess. I would like to just address the board and let you know that I talked with the clerk, and if you are to need to be excused, I'll wait for trustee Amenta. If you are really needing to be excused for bodily reasons or just a phone call, please ask the chair, just mention I need to be excused, and we'll note it in the minutes or in our record of when you leave and when you return. That's just basic procedure. And also, we had 2 people leave, and that meant we didn't have a quorum, so we had to take a recess in your absence. So if you could just do that in the future, that'd be great. The next item is to do the presentation. There will be no questions. And we'll have and entertain all questions on Saturday, the Saturday that was proposed.
Thank you, and that sounds great. Please make notes. I'd be happy to answer questions either on Saturday, or I always try to extend an open invitation to follow up with me as needed for items that don't need to be discussed as a group. I'm happy to answer questions individually. So I do have a summary memo, which has been out for a while. You all hopefully seen it. So let's just start right into the long-range plan on page number 1. I really apologize in advance. I'm going to try to be efficient. I have notes. I'm just going to read from them. And again, my hope is really just to give you a good context for how this comes together, and we'll just get into it then next Saturday on any follow-ups. So, staff has prepared a 10-year plan to help illustrate and put into context the fiscal impact and outlook for the village, given the numerous capital initiatives identified in this plan. All these numbers are based on how this plan is set up. I don't want to get into the initiatives at this point, but that's where we come from the beginning, is to give a context. These are for projects not funded through regular annual revenue sources, meaning debt, perhaps special assessments, perhaps grants in some cases. This is intended to be a 100-foot view fiscal projection for contextual reference. It's not intended to be to the nearest $50 type of thing. It's very 100-foot level. Each year, staff updates the data that was projected for the current year in the preceding long-range plan with the actual data for the current base year. So whatever was projected for in last year's plan for this year is now updated with the real data. We start with a new base number for all the other projections moving forward. This is done so that all future forecasts are refreshed with the most accurate information available. Staff also updates the anticipated project costs within the implementation schedule, and in some cases the implementation schedule itself. So shouldn't be unusual to see that happen. The degree to which that happens is sometimes what we need to review. And we did add a page to the plan, a new page to the plan this year, page 11, which really describes what we do when we update the project plans each year as far as cost estimates and other scheduling issues. You don't have to get into that. Please note that would be an awesome page to review before we start talking about project schedules. Page 11. Again, this is not intended to project budget amounts for the next 10 years, but should illustrate the general fiscal resources that would be required to accomplish the identified capital objectives as proposed in this plan within the following context. Tax levy funded debt service requirements to implement the plan, the debt capacity of the village in compliance under state law and municipal policies, and the ability to implement the plan within state levy limits. Those are our big, broad context. Smaller context is that acceptable to the board? and that's the framework from which we try to move forward. Second page. These forecasts attempt to illustrate the anticipated impacts and trends that these measures will have on our property taxes for residents over time. This is a summary of property taxes by funds. Even within the compliance of the regulatory measures previously discussed, the village board may also seek to modify this project implementation plan in order to meet other community objectives. You know, that goes without saying, but it's been said. In order to stress test the village's ability to be able to implement this plan within state levy limits, staff has projected an average 2.0 structural increase in tax levy for the period of this plan. And again, that's a stress point. It's not saying that's what we're going to do, but it says, if this were to happen, where would we be? For our operational forecast, even within the parameters of the previous assumptions, it's essential to evaluate the fiscal challenges if other revenue sources do not increase as fast as overall costs. There's a table in the plan that does identify those challenges. The capital plan attempts to include the major infrastructure needs of the community likely to be implemented over the period of the plan in conjunction with the various planning efforts or other initiatives adopted by the board. Other isolated needs will come up from time to time and will be integrated into the schedule of the local village board. Then the last item on page 2 talks about utility costs. The village's municipal utilities also face the same pressures of increasing costs over time, as well as being able to meet any increased debt service costs that may be incurred as part of the implementation of these project schedules. Therefore, staff also evaluates the potential needs for future utility rate increases in order to be able to meet the needs of these increases costs, and in order to keep the utilities in a sound fiscal condition consistent with village financial policies. Page 3.
Page
3. This is the schedule, debt service schedule for current and projected debt. Schedule shows the village's existing and planned future tax levy supported debt based on the initiatives identified in this plan. Lines 1 through 5 are largely informational and only used for levy limit adjustment calculations. Line 7 shows the village's existing post-2005 tax levy supported debt service. 2005 is a pivotal year for tax levy computations and levy limits. Line 8 shows the prospective debt service requirements based on the bonding that would be required to implement the projects as currently scheduled within the plan. Line 15 shows the calculated tax levy for debt service used in the moderate levy scenario for planning purposes. This is based on using a 5% stabilization cap on future tax levy increases in order to smooth out the tax levy impact of a significant jump in debt service needs that occurred in 2017. Line 17 through 24 shows the current funding available to meet those debt stabilization efforts and is based on using 75% of the village's currently available unassigned general fund reserves in excess of the required minimum of 30% of revenues, as well as other known revenue inflows from the repayment of previously advances to previous general fund advances to the water and sewer utility. This schedule does not include any future projected budget surpluses or other undetermined revenue streams over the next several years. So again, if you look into 2018, line 18, 750,000, that's 75% of what we've got right now. We didn't want to plan on committing 100% of our excess reserves, but that is our baseline.
Can you say it again, just the percentage?
75% of it currently available unassigned general fund reserves is what our baseline is starting the current cycle. So that's the 750. Again, but annual budgetary surpluses are not included. Then I'd like to have a brief discussion about the sustainability of the 5% debt service stabilization objective. Line 24 shows a running balance, again based on 75% of the current excess reserves in the general fund available in order to meet the goal of stabilizing the annual tax levy debt service increase to a maximum of 5% per year. And as you go across the schedule on line 24, in 2024, these excess reserves would be depleted. And again, please keep in mind, these are excess reserves, not the village's core 30% of revenue reserves. What is not in the plan that's accounted for in this section? The $250,000 holdback of current excess reserves, any future prospective annual budget surpluses, any windfalls from collecting accumulated delinquent parking fines, any windfalls from collecting accumulated delinquent municipal citations, any windfalls of residual revenues as a result of TID 1 closure in 2022, and any windfalls of residual revenue as a result of TID 5 closure currently projected for 2024. Again, given the variety of these metrics, which are within the general control of the village board, staff still does believe that the 5% stabilization metric is sustainable throughout the plan. And that's just staff's position on that. We would hope that we stay with that effort and give it another year or two. There's certainly alternate perspectives on that from which you can certainly base your decision. Staff has no axe to grind on that matter. Page 4. It's a nice chart. Purpose of the chart is twofold. One, to show the village's debt capacity in relation to the state's limit of outstanding debt to 5% of equalized value. That's why the 5% is on the top of the graph. It is all general obligation debt. This is not just levy supported, so we've got utility debt, general debt, and TID debt included in this graph. So it shows you the trends according to this plan as currently prepared. The chart also shows the various components of the outstanding debt for both general trending and compared to the village's debt capacity goals. Those are found in the village's financial policy guidelines at the back of the document. That's the primary purpose here, to give you that information. Page 5. This schedule projects the maximum allowable levy limits for the village under the current state mandated levy limit standards. Based on the moderate tax levy model, which is 2% growth for annual tax levy for annual operations, with a 5% cap on the increased tax levy needed to support debt service payments. Line 14 on this schedule shows the anticipated reserve levy limit capacity of the village over this planning period. What line did I say? Line 14. So you can see we're currently
I know what that means.
pretty good. And we'll get down. So what this means, in 2019, if the body so desired, we could increase our levy by $1.8 million and still be compliant with levy limits. That would be a 15.7% increase in tax levy. Now that is not likely to happen. Again, we just stress test based on a little more pragmatic conditions of just 2% general operations and 5% on debt service as being a metric to measure against. But even at those levels, debt service or tax levy capacity remains for the life of this plan. It's a nice thing. A lot of communities would wish that they could be in this position. So that's really the Line 6, it should also be noted that for planning purposes, we do not assume any future growth factors beyond the current period. So, as was perhaps previously mentioned earlier tonight, net new construction growth increases levy limit. We presume nothing. That's why past 2019 is zeros on line 6. So again, that is the worst case scenario. Any net new construction improves our levy limit capacity over time. The 0.8% in 2019 is already known and has been validated by the state for the program into this presentation. Line 2 does include anticipated levy limit adjustments based on current TID projection closures. So that's 50% of the village's increment at the time of closure, increases the village's levy limit. Again, with the village having...
What year?
It's on line 2. So you see 2022, 2024, and 2027 have values in there.
Of
The anticipated